Apple just had their final 2020 announcement and they released some Macs with the highly anticipated Apple Silicone. If you don't know what that is, it'll all be explained soon, but first, roll intro. Apple released 3 new products, the MacBook Air, the 13-inch MacBook Pro, and then the Mac Mini. Other than the MacBook Air now being fanless, the external hardware is exactly the same. The biggest changes are the internals with Apple's new in-house silicone M1 chip. All 3 products now have the M1 processor at their core, and you may be thinking like, John, you're talking about this, but I have no idea what's going on. Can you explain? Well, I'm glad you asked. At WWDC earlier this June, Apple announced that they're going to be transitioning from Intel, their previous processor maker, to their own in-house silicone processors. Before they made that announcement, computers had one of 2 companies that their processors were made by, either Intel or Ryzen. Apple has been using Intel processors in their Macs for years and years now. The thing is, Apple makes their own iPhone processors, and the processors that they make are better than any other phone processor in the world and are even better than some computer processors. So they cut out the middleman of Intel and started making their own processors. And so what they did today was announce the first generation of their all-new Macs with their in-house made M1 processor. Like I said before, Apple has been buying their chips from Intel for years and years now, and this posed a few problems for Apple. First, the power of their Macs completely relied on what Intel made. And over the past few years, every generation of Intel processors didn't have a whole lot of innovation and wasn't getting a whole lot more powerful. Another problem was that since Apple didn't make these Intel chips, they had to design the software of macOS completely around the architecture and the code for Intel, which wasn't always the most power or battery efficient. Overall, Apple just wasn't happy with the reliance they had on Intel. So they designed a chip that is specifically meant to work with macOS and now offers better battery life and performance. It provides up to 3.5 times better CPU performance and up to 5 times GPU performance, all while using less power, which is absolutely insane. So they threw a ton more numbers at us, but basically what this means for our consumers is, first, better battery life. The MacBook Air and MacBook Pro now have insane battery life, up to 6 hours more than the last generation. Another thing it means for consumers is if you need a certain amount of power, you no longer have to spec up your computer and make it more expensive because the base model is going to be getting a whole lot of power, and so this will save you quite a bit of money. The Mac Mini's base price is even now $100 cheaper than it was before, most likely because they were able to cut out the middleman of Intel. Before this happened, I knew that my next computer was most likely going to be a Mac because I really wanted to use Final Cut. The problem was that the performance of the current 13-inch MacBook just wasn't suited for video editing, so I knew I was going to have to step up to this 16-inch MacBook Pro, which is hundreds and hundreds of dollars more expensive. Now, with the release of the M1 chip in the 13-inch MacBook Pro, at least according to the numbers that Apple says, it is going to be perfectly adequate for my video editing needs and is going to save me quite a bit of money. Of course, we have to wait for the actual units to come out and see if the numbers that Apple were giving are really accurate. But overall, this switch from Intel to Apple's own processors is going to benefit consumers greatly. This was just a super quick video rundown explaining very generally what effects the M1 processor will have on consumers. If you did enjoy the video, drop a like down below. If you would subscribe, it would really mean a lot. I'm John from 16 Views. See ya.